going to start with one piece of logistics, and then we're going to hear from each of the four groups.
Just a quick logistical issue, two logistical issues, one today and one tomorrow. Any of you that need taxis, there is a sign-up sheet out on the front for taxis after today's session if you need to go anywhere besides nearby. Second, I need to remind you that tomorrow is the March for Life. So there will be a lot of protesters in Capitol Hill. Some of the roads around here will be closed tomorrow, especially the road over by the Verizon Center. So if you're planning on coming in from anywhere or need to leave to go to the airport, allow yourself a little extra time tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. And so we are now, again, report outs targeting on the order of 5 minutes from each of the groups. And we, again, will do these in the same order. So we're going to start with the topic on establishing effective inter-society collaborations.
Oh, I need to get our slide deck up. Oh. Here he comes. So, while we're waiting, who here is from out of town? Yeah. Oh, how do we get that backward? Oh. Can we take that to the beginning? There we go. So, hello everyone again. My name's Bert Dick from IEEE, and our breakout topic was establishing effective inter-society collaborations. Since we didn't have a list of people who joined us, I decided just to give us a name, the best and the brightest. You probably recognize that, right? No objections from the team. So a couple things we discussed. We talked about the how, the roadblocks to how, also some ideas. But I think that we closed off with a really interesting point about how do we making this workshop different from all the others in terms of what we do next. So let me first talk about some of the roadblocks we identified. A lot of us, there's staff, but there's also volunteers. And one of the issues that was raised that volunteer relationships change because volunteers move on to other things. And as someone described it as shifting sand. So it's tough to build the consistency and the continuity when you have that shift in volunteers. It's also, believe it or not, with our websites, it's hard to find the right contacts at societies, making sure you're trying to connect to the right person, even with all the wealth of information we have on our websites. Maybe there's too much. Also, very hard to identify the right subject matter experts. There are a lot of opportunities. How do you go about identifying the people that will be able to do this type of work and work on these projects? The silos of our societies are sometimes very hard to break through. There's also uneven distribution of workload sometimes, where some of us are working on one other thing. There's not a lot of time to give to something new. And intellectual property, societies are not willing to give that up. So when you're working on some project like that, where you might run into, again, that roadblock. We're also competing sometimes for the same audiences and dollars. So, it makes us sometimes unwilling to work together. If we do get to collaborate, how do we sustain that collaboration? Because sometimes we've had examples of working together and societies lose interest in something. So it makes you unwilling to want to try to do a collaboration again. And some societies themselves don't really focus on education. So getting them to do that is a difficult challenge. And then finally, we identified institutional roadblocks. Believe it or not, sometimes people are told, no, you're not supposed to be doing things like that. Don't try that. In terms of our ideas, obviously we want to do more workshops like this, bringing the societies together more often. The ABET model works. This ABET brings together the societies for a society summit, and Chuck is willing to expand that to include topics beyond just accreditation issues, also working through ASCE. So there might be great opportunities for us to do that. And we need to expand some of our topic areas in terms of doing some of this program beyond our own fields of interest. So saying it's not just something about electrical engineering, but it could be a topic or a program related to societal issues or the grand challenges. We want to identifying those areas for potential collaboration. There are many good examples, and we got a good one today about the Computer Society working with ACM on a curriculum. So there are specific topics, working on specific topics. Also, we got an interesting thing on the local level, a class that was created that involves students from different societies working together on projects. We also talked about social media communities, both IEEE and ABET. We have new tools that can connect people. It's not like a Facebook or a LinkedIn system. These are specific to our societies, but it can allow us to stay connected. Also, reciprocal memberships. That benefits the members, but in a way it also benefits the societies, because a byproduct of that is staff start talking together and learning about how each other organizations operate. Some additional ideas, transparency and trust was an important one. There has to be a willingness to go forward and share the good and bad and make that decision to work together. Again, as we discussed, a clear focus on objectives like the 50K Coalition. Societies will work together in a common interest. And it also gives you the ability to leverage each society's strengths. It doesn't mean you have to do the same things. You might do X, the other society might do Y. Research. There are great successes out there, and we need to be able to need to be able to share those. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, and working together makes sharing pretty easy. Don't try to do too much at once. Play the long game. We don't have to change the world overnight. And again, tell those success stories of societies. And I'll touch on that when we get to the last slide. But success stories might be able to influence some of those other societies to try something new or try that approach. As we closed out our discussion, an issue was raised. How do we make this workshop different? We've all come to these workshops. There's great discussion, great activity. We get reports, but what happens after? And we want to make sure that doesn't happen here. We're committed to making change here. So we decided this is all in our hands. We need to make that commitment to act, and I know we'll be talking more about that later. But we need to continue the conversation. So let's talk about setting up the next meeting, whether it's face-to-face or virtual. Also, try to create some sort of central clearinghouse, a portal that can connect all the ideas that we had today. It might be on the NAE website or something, but we want to be able to access all this information. Also, we need some sort of an infrastructure to help support these activities. And a key thing is understanding our shared values, because the key issue here is, why do we want to work together? What do we get out of working together? I'll emphasize again about sharing the how-to of the programs that were identified today during the lightning round. There were some really great ideas. A lot of other societies might be able to do something similar. So if we could create some how-tos about putting those things into play. And then finally, we said, let's try things on a small scale. It doesn't have to be a major, large program, and it also can have an endpoint. It doesn't have to be forever. If we can get some of those successes, it'll help us build our relationships and keep us working together. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Just quickly, one or two questions? Or not. That's okay. Okay.
No questions? Okay.
We'll move on. Next up is bolstering society-university collaboration.
First, we start off with the recognition that there are somewhat different cultures, that the societies incorporate industry as well as academia, and universities are supposed to be dealing with and paying attention, particularly in engineering schools, with industry, but are academia. Nevertheless, two key intersections identified for societies. One is societies can help universities shape students as professionals. Professional societies define what the profession is, what professional behavior is. I remember getting on a soapbox with a group of sophomores about the need for professionalism and so on. Students stopped me after class, said, well, what does it take to be a professional? Is there a certain pay level? I said, no. We can help educate people about what that is and shape them in technical and non-technical ways. Second thing societies do is advance the curriculum and the directions of the different professions and of the community as a community. Again, the industry, academia, government pivot. So, for example, we had examples of shaping students as professionals, again, providing examples of positive professional behavior. The idea that student members of societies and student chapters were an excellent opportunity for leadership skill building compared to the leadership skill building approach that often we use, and team building skills of get in a team, be a leader, learn how to do it by mistakes. The societies can help develop actual skills. Then the issue of helping that process through the continuity of chapter advisors and sort of balanced encouragement of the advisors to be passionate but keep the rest of their professions in balance too. Found that was helped by having a continuity. We just heard about the shifting sands issue, and of course the shifting sands of students cycling through, of advisors cycling through, is a challenge there. As far as advancing the curriculum, again, the societies can be key catalysts for analyses of where the profession is, of what needs to be done. There are also means, I understand ASCE does, AICHE has summer schools for new chemical engineering faculty. For AICHE, it's an every 5-year process. It really crystallizes a generation of activity in both technical topics and pedagogical approaches. Unmet opportunities. This business between the affinity societies supporting special topic societies as compared to the disciplinary societies. There was the remark, representatives of some of the affinity societies, that they could do more to encourage student professionalism by getting them involved in the disciplinary societies as well, showing the value of that aspect. At the end, the topic came up about the collaborations and the need to speak up about professional policies and public policies, making use of the general faith that the public has in engineers as being honest brokers, even if there's a mistrust of the companies that engineers are associated with very often. A large part of this had to do with balancing the understanding of uncertainties and of alternative interpretations, what sort of action should be taken. A number of studies have shown that the public wants that something is not true unless all scientists and engineers agree on something, and vice versa. And plainly, that's not the case. So the ability to encourage actions based on probable and high consequence issues. Climate change popped up easily. Of course, now that the current administration is giving sort of mixed message, making statements saying it's happening, people have an impact, and then showing other things. Nevertheless, there's general acceptance in the public. We can help inform, we can help regulators make better decisions, encouraging other valuable activities. Things like helping the public understand the balance between cyber power and cyber threats. So again, a range of things where people can, where engineers through the societies and the universities can help people understand better the reality of uncertainties that are there, while not being paralyzed from action because there are uncertainties, but actually move based on probabilities. Are there any other comments from our breakout or from anyone else? Pitch in? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we've heard about inter-society collaborations, society, university. This next group is using societies to facilitate academia industry alignment. There's a theme going on here, and so societies, industry, and academia.
Good afternoon. I'm Harriet Nemhard. Have you all ever been in a committee meeting and then there's an action item and they say, oh, it should go to the person who's not here? You know that joke, right? Literally, I stepped out to get some water, and when I came back, I was the breakout reporter, but happy to serve. We were moderated by John Wall from Cummins. We had 5 groups of 3 that first discussed this topic of using societies to facilitate academic industry alignment. So I just want to leave kind of a nutshell here. So I'm just going to try to offer 3 topic areas from what we did, perhaps from in order of being most ambitious. So I think at the overall level, maybe we're thinking about this again as perhaps action items that societies can consider taking up. So the first one related to industry engagement targeted at students. I think many of us are familiar with this level of work, things such as the competitions, but perhaps an outcome of the competitions being an actual product, for example. Another one in that first bucket of targeting at students, of course, the co-op and internship programs and ways that we can continue to make that richer, and having industry speakers and professors of practice who can come back to campus and perhaps also at that time ask what they would change in the curriculum. So that was our bucket of industry engagement targeted at students. The second bucket was with respect to faculty engagement with industry. And one of the things that we started talking about was ways that we could encourage conversations to take place between industry advisory boards and faculty, and that perhaps societies can help to facilitate those conversations if IABs in particular are primarily alumni-driven. So there might be an opportunity to have societies to work with that and augment the alumni perspective and the alumni energy and understand what faculty are involved in. Another topic, an interesting one that came up, was perhaps when faculty are having startup packages, that as a part of their startup package, they might have a 50-50 sponsorship of a summer internship or a summer immersion experience in industry for faculty. So in other words, that the university might fund half of that, a company might fund half of that, provide some mentorship for that faculty member as a way to help to launch their career. And then in that faculty engagement area, again, it was the opportunity to take IUCRCs that already have this charge and have the industry university collaborative research centers, right? And is there a way to have the IUCRCs work together in some ways to increase this industry faculty alignment more broadly than beyond their main topical mission? So that was the faculty engagement bucket. The third and final bucket was on advocacy. One of the things that we talked about as perhaps being a barrier is the academic culture, and how do we revolutionize the academic culture. And if we can do that, then perhaps an outgrowth or an outcome for that would be that more faculty would have the bandwidth to work in industry. So with that in mind, one aspect of potential advocacy was to have societies, perhaps through a task force, help to motivate a culture shift on the P&T process. So the P&T process becomes one that is opened up and perhaps more receptive to some of the experiences, such as faculty being engaged with industry that we talked about in the first bucket. So that was our report. Anything from my teammates or others in the group?
I say nice job.
For being...
Okay, last report out is on societies and informal learning.
All right, so we spoke a lot about how societies can engage in a university environment, but in a more informal method. Having been through AAAA and Design Build Fly and being also a part of the Ceramic Society, I've personally had quite an experience, and Design Build Fly was the first time I had used a hammer and nails and all those things, and so it really opened up my experience. We defined the informal learning as anything outside of a structured classroom. So that could be in a laboratory that's not necessarily for a course credit. It could also be a project put forward by a society. And a couple things to note is that some of the literature suggested that up to 90% of retained learning is actually from an informal learning process. So it's a really big part of even the collegiate experience is these tangible byproducts. And so societal challenges and design challenges are perhaps one of the highest factors of engaged learning. So we looked at a couple different case studies from people in our roundtable, and in particular, a couple that were identified were outreach programs and communicating STEM principles. The goals of all of these different programs together have generally been how do we better engage and attract minorities and women who are underrepresented in these different STEM fields. And different challenges are how to get local professionals to be a part of this, hurdles in reaching the students because the students who are in perhaps the largest need have the most issues with transportation, perhaps less engaged family structures, as well as less time to actually participate in it if they're working as well to put themselves through school. One of the outcomes of our conversation is ways to mitigate those challenges involve bringing in societal members who are really effective as mentors, and that didn't necessarily mean in an informal classroom or on a site or in a laboratory on a weekly basis, but even that e-mentoring showed high degrees of effectiveness for engaging these students, giving them a place of identity and a feeling that they belong, and that those markers are actually really highly correlated with success and long-term retention in the program or the field. Some of the areas that we had hurdles for in terms of sustainability and then female engagement were also addressed by different programs, including 21st Century Community Learning, and then a joint program from NASA and NOAA and the Library Institution. I missed the acronym. And they found that developing an infrastructure to support these harder to reach students, whether that's just through basic infrastructure or going to them as opposed to expecting them to come to you, and that can be both digitally or virtually or in person, has really large gains. And then as we look kind of in a conclusive way at the system level, we identified that there is a substantial amount of bias, and that has a real effect on it being an open and encouraging field for people to participate in, particularly for underrepresented and women in these type of engineering fields. One of the things identified is that societal leadership and those mentors have an incredible opportunity to actually demand and engage a culture for those laboratories or informal environments that reverses some of the roles to make sure that some people aren't being pushed out of the conversation or pushed away from the tools, and then to also create to be cognizant that it's an evolutionary process, that you can't just merge everything together in an immediate fix-all, which we'd like to do, but that to create identity safety zones, because the actual being put out of your comfort zone or from the theory of change, that unfreezing, you can then spike cortisol levels and stress levels, and people are less likely to re-engage and if they're overwhelmed. But then that resting period can actually make them more likely to be effective going forward, and that whole process of diversity, inclusivity, and effective mentoring acts as a feedback loop to make the next generation of your study, whether that's a four-year group of students or cohort, makes them much more effective and much more likely for success over the long term. So anything else the team would add? Any thoughts? Okay.
Okay. Thank you.